Hey everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear, and today we're going to learn how to do some general maintenance on your paintball markers. Alright, so we've got a Dangerous Power E1 to look at today. We'll go ahead and take it apart. Sometimes the macro fittings on these can be a little hard to get the actual hose out, so we might leave it on there and just work around it if I can't get it out by hand. Sometimes, like I said, they're difficult. So I've already pulled these two screws out. Just get them out of the way, and we'll disconnect our wiring that's inside of there. So you have your eye wires and your solenoid wires coming down. We're going to unplug those. This is our battery wire. We don't need to unplug that. It can just sit there. It's not in the way. Sometimes, well, I should say most of the time on these, you have to be very careful, and I guess that goes with any gun, but these especially, that if you try to grab the wire itself and pull the wire up to pull the socket or the plug out of the socket, it's very, very difficult. And you can pull the wiring actually right out. So I would recommend that you use a pick and that you actually scoop it out with the pick. Now, see if I can show this to you. I'm going to put my pick on it and then go in like this. There's a little slot on both sides of these. So there's two little indentations right there, and then on this set there's two also. You can actually get your pick in on these two slots and help lift the plug out. So what I do is I put a little bit, I don't know if you guys can see in there like that. So right there, there's one there and there's one right there. You can get the pick underneath and kind of help lift the whole plug out without pulling the socket off the board, and that will help. So I pull lightly with my hand on the wiring, and I get my pick underneath that, and I keep just going left, right, and keep scooping it up over and over again, and it'll slowly walk its way up to the point where it will pop out like that. And I really didn't use the wiring at all to pull. I just walked it out with the pick and helped it up by pulling gently on the wiring. I recommend that over yanking it out because I've seen people destroy their wiring like that. So, and you can do that with any of the port plugs on really any gun. You can do it if you can get access to it. But a lot of them aren't as tight as these ones are. All right, so let's pull the reg. We're just going to unscrew it off of here, like so, and then we're going to take our frame off and get the frame away from the body, and we can work on all these parts separate. So let's see, we need, I think it's this one. Yes. So what was this? This is a 1/4 inch for this fitting up in there. That looks like that. And then I believe this one is a 5/64. No, this is a 3/32, I think. And that one's kind of up at the top right there. And once you get on any gun, you get the frame screws out, and you're at the point where your frame can separate from your body. You never just yank it off of there. You slightly and gently separate, and before you pull your body away from your frame, you always peek inside and you see where the wiring is running. Because on certain guns, maybe not a Dangerous Power gun, maybe some other brand, there's different sections where the wiring needs to pass through. And if you don't know where that is, and you just put every wire through the same hole, you could crush something or damage something and cause a problem. So always check before you separate, check to see where things go. And then gently guide everything out and put it to the side. So with our frame itself, there's not too many things to check on. we've got an O-ring that sits on the top up here. And this just pushes against the bottom of it right there. So this is going to drop in and it pushes the frame up against the body. So we have this sealing O-ring right here. If you have a leak from that area, that's where I would look for that. And then we have our ASA down here at the bottom. Let's see if I can separate this. Hey, look at that. On our ASA, you can pull this off, and let's see if we can pop that out. That comes out of there. Now this might be Loctited in, so I might not be able to easily get this one out of here, but it does come out. And then here's our O-ring. And this is really flattened. I'm pretty sure that this is an O-ring, but it's just flat, squashed flat because it's pressed up against the inside housing of the ASA in there. So pin goes through there. I'm pretty sure this pin is just, it's not necessarily directional. Although it does look like it has one longer end than the other. So watch which way this comes out to make sure that it goes the same direction. Then when we're done, we'll just put it back together real fast. If you get an ASA leak, there's 2 ports on the bottom right here. If you get a leak through here or through the front, it's that O-ring that is on that core we just put in. If you have a leak through here on the back, it's your tank O-ring that's causing the problem. So easy to figure out which is which. Just use the appropriate one. And we're going to go this way. And then put this back on. Less parts we have flopping around the table, the better. That's it. Let's see if I have a pair of, I do. A lot of times people have problems with their macro fittings. I mean, could probably be a video all on its own. But how to fix an O-ring or how to fix a leaky macro fitting. Since I've got this one apart right now, the macro fitting slides together with the hose just like that. And these do leak. It's very normal for them to leak. If you have a small pair of needle nose like this one right here, you can grab the collar. So you see the collar that lifts up and down right there. You can get underneath it with something like that. And you kind of just walk it up so you can get the collar actually out. You want to be careful though that you don't crush these arms on the collar. You don't want to bend these and pinch them down so that it's just jammed all together. You just want to gently get under the lip and walk it up and out. And then inside here is an O-ring. And this O-ring is what the hose slides through and seals. All right? So if you have a leak coming out of your fitting, it's typically this O-ring is bad. Now, over time of this going in and out of this fitting and pressurizing and degassing and stuff, the collar right here has teeth on the bottom of it. You can see that. And those teeth are what grip the macro fitting and keep it from moving and sliding out. So when you push the collar down like this and pull the hose out, it lets the teeth spread out and lets the hose come out. But these teeth will mark this hose up. And over time, it will just cause problems with the O-ring itself. So when you pull the hose out and you see it, if it looks destroyed, switch out the hose and switch out the O-ring. If you pull the hose out and the hose looks fine, then just switch out the O-ring. But everything looks fine. Obviously, this is a brand new gun, so we'll just put it back together. You take your O-ring. This is a 10, 01070 Buna O-ring. That's pretty standard for all macro fittings. You just push it down into the bottom, take the collar, push it back down on there, and that's it. So that's how to fix a leaky macro fitting, because it does happen. Now the reg, let's pull the reg apart. Hopefully I can actually get this apart here. I know these want to rotate all around. And sometimes they don't like to separate. That's that, and that. And that. And then I don't really need to take this off of here, but let's do it anyway. Yeah. I might not be able to get this off of here. Sometimes the macro fitting, when they put the macro fitting in, they put it in far enough where it catches the housing and it doesn't want to let go. So to get this piece actually all the way apart, I would have to undo the fitting. But we don't need to get this out, I don't think. Pretty sure this can come out. We can get this. And that's it. That's the whole assembly right there. This is on here just so that it can swivel around. So you can always have your macro line lined up. And if this was not in as far, when we pulled this set screw out, we should be able to just slide it off there. But it's catching on the inside. It's not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. I would not pull it out and try to reset it so that it didn't do that. You do not need to pull this off. The only reason you might need to somewhere down the line is if you had a weird leak coming from between here, not out the middle and not from the fitting itself, but like on the inside lip right here, or maybe it was leaking right here. In order for the swivel to occur, there is an O-ring that sits underneath this housing or this body to seal up the air transfer. So, I mean, that shouldn't ever really leak. But if it did, then you would need to pull that out of there. No big deal. All right, so our reg adjuster, here's our reg seat. You want to inspect that. It's what marries up with the piston right there. So we want to make sure that that is free of debris, not broken or cracked, no holes or pits in it. If so, replace the whole thing. You cannot just replace this seat by itself. You would have to replace the whole adjuster. O-ring on the bottom, if you have a leak coming out the bottom, check that O-ring right there. Our piston. Got two O-rings on it, one there and one there. So if you have a leak coming through the bleed hole right there, it could be this O-ring right there. If you have a problem with the reg overcharging, supercharging, not recharging properly, you could have a bad O-ring here, or the seat could be bad like that. Or when you took the regulator apart, you improperly stacked your shims. So this shim set right here works as a spring. These shims is called a Belleville washer. They are not flat, they are bowed. And when you stack them against each other and you alternate them each time, it will create a shim stack like this, which works as a spring. So even though these are not wound like a spring or coiled, they act as a spring. So when they compress and then push back, they work as a spring. If you were to stack them wrong, you take this one like this, and then this top one you were to turn over, you see how it sits flush against it now? That would change the working pressure of the regulator. It would change its, it would actually drop the pressure, I believe, on it, because you've shortened the stack. And then you might not ever get any pressure out that you need to achieve velocity. So make sure that your shim stacks are always in proper order, otherwise your regulator will have problems. Put that back on there. Let's reassemble. There. 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 And if you're going to get into paintball, I would recommend a good set of snap ring pliers. These are terrible. I have good ones downstairs. And this screw that we put in, if I tighten it down, it keeps this thing from rotating, which is not what we want. We want to back it up. So you would put it in to where you feel it hit the bottom, and then back it up so that this will rotate. And it would actually, if this wasn't set in there too deep like it is, it would keep this from moving and falling off. So that's what this screw is for, is to keep this housing from falling off the bottom. All right, so that's that and that. Moving on up. Let's go with the body. So we've got eyes, which is our wiring here, and our solenoid. Sorry, our solenoid and our bolt back here. Let's pull the bolt off. The bolts are super basic on these guns. This is more of a dump valve than a spool, but they're kind of the same. So inside here, this is our back cap. We've got, I believe, 2 O-rings on the back cap. We have one here and one here. This one rides in there like that. And then we've got O-ring, O-ring, O-ring on our bolt. And then also, we have, I think, one in there. I can't quite tell. Yeah. This is a little different than like the G4, G5 setup. On those guns, you won't see the O-rings on the outside of the bolt. Here, you'll see actually the O-rings on the inside of the body. But there is one O-ring on here. Let me just make sure I can feel it. Yeah, there is. So there's an O-ring that sits just behind the breech right here. And this will seal when the bolt needs to retract. So when the bolt comes forward, boop, like that, they want to make sure that the bolt seals as it tries to travel backwards. So when the solenoid switches and it puts air to the front to here on the bolt to drive the bolt this way, this O-ring is going to be in the middle of your breech, so it won't seal. So they need something inside there to help drive the bolt backwards. So if you have an issue with your bolt wanting to retract, you check your solenoid, and you also check the O-ring that sits on the inside of the body right here. That's what seals the front of the bolt to slide it backwards. So that's the only O-ring that is inside here. On the some of their other versions, the G5, the G4, there are 3 O-rings. There's 1, 2, 3, and those O-rings help direct traffic, air traffic, back through there. All right, that's that. Lastly would be our solenoid and our eyes. So let's take the eye covers off. Take our eye detent out. We've got a spring and the actual detent itself. So now we'd have to remove the solenoid off of here. So we're going to undo the solenoid. And at the same time, we are going to separate the eye off the body. We don't want to just pull the solenoid off and yank everything, because these eyes might be still stuck in there. So we want to make sure we lift the eye wire and the eye bulb out of the body so that we can lift it off easily. Now every once in a while, like this one did, the 2 O-rings that seal the solenoid to the body will stay against the body. You can see that they're sitting there. So we want to make sure that as we pull the solenoid off, we're watching that. We want to make sure those O-rings go back onto the solenoid so that we don't lose them. If you have a leaky solenoid, check these O-rings right here, make sure they're okay, and that they are functioning properly. Because that could be the reason. If your solenoid's bad, it could be just the O-rings under your solenoid are bad. It's rare because they don't actually move or do anything, but they can go bad. If you want to rebuild your solenoid, you can. Now, this is one of those things I might not be able to get off by hand, and that I would need to actually set this in my vise downstairs, or to do it this way. Still might not be able to do it. Yeah, I can't get that by hand. I'll need to put that in a vise and then use a slightly larger screwdriver that I can get a better grip on to get this out. But this would be what you would pull off of there, and you would clean the spool inside there and change the O-rings off out if you have a leaky or bad solenoid. Now, also the solenoid itself, the coil set inside there could go bad. If that does, there's nothing you can do about it. You just replace it. They tape off this end. They don't want you getting into that side. They only want you to work or repair the spool side, which has the O-rings on it. So if you pull the spool out, switch the O-rings, put it back together, and it still doesn't work, just replace it. They're not expensive. I think they're 24, 29 bucks, something like that. So don't worry if you have to replace one. Seen it happen. All right, so let's put it back together. Since you got this off, if you go this far, clean your eyes out. A lot of people they clean the eyes, like they'll pull them out and they'll actually clean the bulbs off, but they never clean the hole that they go into. And so they jam the eye back in there and it's just covered in dirt again. So actually clean the slots. Or vice versa. I've seen people just swab it out and be like, oh, my eyes are clean, but they never pull the bulb out and clean that. So it's the same thing. If you're going to do one, do the other, you know? All right. Solenoid back together. You can go down in there. Down in there. Tighten. Tighten. All right. I always check my solenoid after I put it on. It's just, I guess, a habit. You don't probably need to, but I always just grab it for some reason and I move it side to side to make sure that it is set on there. It's probably just a weird thing I do, but that's okay. Everybody's got their weird things they do. And then we'll put that eye wire in there. When we go to put this back together, it's going to be very important that we make sure that these eye wires do not get pinched or damaged. You can see that one fits nicely on that side. I don't know if I can fit that one down in there. I think you can. You can fit that down in there. And this will just protect it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. See how I have run the wires underneath? They're running actually in a little channel, a little groove next to the solenoid right there. And this will help keep them out of the way and keep them protected so that when we put the frame on, the frame doesn't crush these wires. I've seen that a lot, not with just this gun, but really with any gun out there, that when people go to marry the frame to the body, they don't pay attention to where their wiring is, and they just smash solenoid wires, they smash eye wires, and then they wonder why their stuff doesn't work. They bring it in, and it's got these ridiculous gouge marks on them from where they crushed it together and then screwed everything in, and then they go, oh, it was like that because they didn't realize that they were in the way. So just be careful with your eyes for any gun. That's just food for thought for any paintball marker. All right, so we're gonna put this back together. I've put my eye in, I've put my detent back in and my spring. Now I'm gonna set my eye cover on there and just try to gently place it without moving this spring. The spring will want to jump out and go all over the place, so make sure you come down right from the top so that it doesn't have anywhere to go, and then gently tighten it down. Don't over tighten these eye covers. You don't want to break that screw or strip out that screw. Then you're screwed, literally. If you damage that body, then it's never I don't even think that's a word. It's never going to be fixed. You have to replace your body. All right, so that's done. Let's put this back together. These E1s are very, very straightforward, very basic setups here. So we're going to run our wiring back through the hole. And when I looked in here, that's the pass-through right there, where that went through. That wiring went right above the micro switch and came out right there. Wasn't through this little hole in the back, wasn't anywhere else, but right through there. One thing I will say to look out for is the trigger spring is sitting right there, and it doesn't actually fit. I don't want to say fit. There's a little pocket that it sits in that is under the spring, like down in the trigger right here in the frame, but it can come out of it, so don't lose it. The trigger, once it's off the body, it's free to just kind of go wherever it wants to go. So it does not hold the spring in place. You have to make sure that you don't lose that spring or let it fall out, because then your trigger would just be loosey-goosey all over the place. All right, so let's run our wiring back in. Make sure that I'm not crushing anything. Perfect. Looks good. I'm going to line up my front here so I can put this one down in. I'm just going to put it in until it hits the bottom, and I'm not going to snug it up yet. I want to give myself a little bit of play so that I can find the screw hole for this one. Sometimes if you just tighten things up right away, you don't leave yourself any play to get other screws in. You'll find yourself trying to put a screw in and it just rotates and rotates and rotates and it never catches. That's just because it's slightly out of position for the other ones, or because the other ones are so tight. So now I've tightened that one down, I can go back and tighten this one down. And call it a day on that. Let's put our wiring back together, push it down. Push it down. That's good. Let's take our grips, put them back on, make sure I'm not crushing any wires before I put my grips in. There's always a potential to squash stuff, so just make sure. There's a potential to use the wrong Allen key too. Am I not lined up here? I'm not. And the same thing with my grip screws. I always do my grip screws in, not tight, then get the last one in, and then go back and tighten them down. It helps, again, line up holes in there. Now we're going to put our regulator in, screw it all the way up, and then lastly, it'll be to just connect our hose, and we will be finished. That snaps together, and then you can kind of set it any way you want right there. So that is the E1 from Dangerous Power. Well guys, I hope this helps you out with any questions or concerns you have about your paintball gear or products. And as always, for all your paintball needs, shop ansgear.com.